Welcome everybody. Oh, is that a bit loud? Okay, welcome everybody, and we'll begin our meeting. So just welcome everybody. We have a few participants online. Welcome, and hopefully we put your hand up online if you want us to, if you want to get our attention. So welcome everybody, and I'll just start with a karakia. Whakataka ki te uru, whakataka ki te tonga, kia mā kina kia uta, kia mā taru ki tai, e hia ki ana te atakura, he tio, he hoka, he heihu, te hei mauri ora. So thank you very much. So first up, apologies. I don't think we have any apologies. Every TA and organisation is represented here. On Mayor Bex's apology, but we have Craig online, so thank you. And okay, so if I'll just have a mover for that. Simon is moving it, Samir was, and Darren Ponta is seconding that. So all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Motion is carried. Thank you. Any conflict of interest declarations? None. That is great. Public participation, we have none. And then confirmation of minutes from our last meeting on Tuesday, the 10th of February. So I'm sure everybody's seen that in their pack of material. Anybody want to raise anything, any concerns, corrections or anything? No, real good. Could we please have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Mayor Perry, and seconded by Emma. Thank you. And all those in favour, please say aye. 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 No, the motion is carried. Thank you. So first item is, next item is the item number 5, and Emma, welcome. Emma, welcome to our table, and I'll let you take us through that, this item. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou. For your decision, this is a proposed variation to the Wellington Regional Land Transport Plan, which was adopted in the update in 2024, and it's for the Wellington region roads of national significance. We'll just note, unfortunately, there was a bit of a human error and an incorrect attachment was sent out. So this has now been updated in the online order paper, and you'll see that you've all got a paper copy in front of you, which is the correct numbers. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll take the paper as read.
Councillor Ponta.
So perhaps a bit of an unfair question, Emma, but at what point do you think a plan is a plan versus just being an aspiration statement? And so the reason for asking that question is we've got a variation here, understand it, understand that it's changing an emphasis for a project that's already in train, putting in a new proposal for a new tunnel, etc., etc. But at the same time, we've got the Minister of Transport saying there is no money for roads of national significance at all. In fact, my understanding is that possibly only the first 2 of those roads of national significance can be funded. So we're busy here stuffing things into the plan and what have you. The list is growing of things that are in the plan, but actually none of it means anything. So how much store should we be putting in this? Should I be concerned if I sign off on this that I've signed my life away for something that actually means something, or is it just another aspiration that we're putting into the plan to be considered with everything else at some future date?
Through the chair. Thanks, Darren,
Sorry.
for your question. It needs to be taken as an administrative kind of to the same level as the 2024 update or the midterm review of that RLTP. So at that point, that was all of the approved organisations in the region putting together what they wanted to see funded. And it went in and then got assessed as part of a significance level and came out at number 5. So I think it needs to be taken at the same amount of importance as that was through that process, which went through the hearings and all the rest of it. There's a lot of other noise that's going on around these sort of projects and everything else at the moment, but I think it's important this particular variation is for that 2024 midterm review document in its form, and it's as if you're in 2024, I guess, and looking at this as an activity. Emma Spate, may want to add anything else as NZTA?
Yeah, our view is that it's important that we keep the RLTP updated and current. It is an important document for the region, and so that was the reason why we wanted to make sure that we had that description updated as part of the normal variation process. Obviously, decisions on funding and so on have yet to be made, and it's if those decisions are made by the government, we will then make any further changes that are necessary at that time.
I think you had a follow-up.
So, just on that issue then, one of the issues that the Minister of Transport raised was because this and successive governments are going to be in a bit of a fiscal hole, we, New Zealand Inc., are going to have to consider different ways of cutting our cloth. And one of the things that has come along as a mechanism in the time that this discussion has been taking place is congestion charging. I would have thought purpose-built at least for a consideration for the terrace tunnel. Question, if we put this into the plan, have we now walked past the possibility of considering congestion charging, or is that still potentially an issue that is in the mix because it is now a mechanism that is available and wasn't at the time when this project was first mooted?
Congestion charging is for local authorities to initiate. So, in terms of the current legislation to enable that to occur, it would be up to Wellington City to determine that it wanted to apply for congestion charging, and then to work with NZTA as the administering body for that. So, so it's certainly not off the table for any urban area that wants to consider it, and it could well be applied in the case of Wellington City.
So maybe my third question is to Emma. If the City Council did apply for congestion charging, how does that then feature in this plan, where the plan has sort of given a green light, if you like, or signalled that we're actually going down a particular pathway that doesn't involve congestion charging? There's a bit of a tension in there. I'm just wondering how that's resolved. Will that be tidied up with another variation in due course, or is that not an issue for the regional transport plan?
So time of use charging would take some time to implement, and obviously there'd have to be a proper process to consider how it would be applied and all of the decisions that would go alongside that. I wouldn't expect that would happen prior to the next RLTP being finalised, but if at any point in the process, if that change was to be brought in the context of Wellington's transport network, then we would look at how that would impact and interact with any other transport proposals. So we see it very much that we have a very integrated network here in Wellington, and how you would apply any of those tools. We need to look at the principles of how we get the greatest efficiency out of our transport network and enable people to use it to get where they need to go. So I think all of those things would be taken into account prior to any final design of such a system.
Thank you. Thanks for the answers there. Has anybody else got any questions, please? All good. In that case, I'll look for a mover and a seconder. Oh, Councillor Randall is going to move and Emma will second. Any debate? Yes.
Kia ora. I don't agree that this project has good value for money, but I understand what we've been asked to do as an update, and I'm a pragmatic person, so I will, vote on that accordingly. But I guess I echo some of the sentiment around Darren Ponter's questions around this not being good value for money, especially given the uncosted and unbudgeted for big giant bronze program. So thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much. And nobody, Councillor Ponter?
I'll propose an amendment to this paper, and that is that the chair of the Regional Transport Committee writes to the Mayor of Wellington, asking for consideration for congestion charging to be applied on State Highway 1 at or about the Terrace Tunnel. I don't
Do
know
you
if
have
I have a
wording and do you
seconder.
have a seconder?
I'll second.
Mayor Perry, second. So that, which one is this you're proposing this as an amendment to?
No, it's an addition.
Okay, an additional one. So a recommendation number 3.
So to be clear, I'm not opposing the
Right, yep.
recommendations.
Yeah. So you're adding a recommendation number 3. So have we typed that up? And that's up there.
A lot of them jump off at Thorndon.
Darren,
So
can
hang on
you?
a second, just a slight amendment.
Has to be in the Thorndon Throat.
The Thorndon Throat. There you go.
Madam Chair, they jump off at Thorndon, so the Terrace Tunnel's too late for congestion charging. A lot of work been done on this in past years.
It's in that area from the ferry terminal.
From around the ferry terminals where they come through.
Could we be more vague?
Microphone,
Yeah.
just so that the others online can
Congestion
hear
charging on State Highway 1.
We'll just leave it, into Wellington City.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
That catches 2 as well.
Yeah.
you. Okay, so that's the wording.
Should we?
So microphone.
Highway 1 and keep it just so that it's not State Highway 1, State Highway 2.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine.
Applied.
So can I just remind people that people online, which is like Anita and Craig, can't hear you if the microphone's not on? Yeah. So we're just finessing, for those online, we're just finessing the wording so that the mover and seconder, it captures what they are proposing. Is that there now? So I have a hand up. Well, first I'll, do you want to speak to that?
No,
Okay, Emma.
I'd be interested in the views of Wellington City Council. I would note that under the legislation is time of use charging. Congestion charging is one type of time of use charging. It may not be the most appropriate model to apply, so I would not support specifying congestion charging in this context. I think time of use charging is the appropriate framing.
We can amend it to time of use if that's the most more appropriate terminology.
So that's
Could I ask a question about time of use charging? It's a good tool to use, but seeing as a lot of Hutt Valley people would be caught by it, with the money that is collected by the time of use charging, what is the purpose? Where will it go? What will it be used for?
I think, is that a question to the mover? Because the mover ought to know their intent of their motion.
No, that's not really a question to me. That will be a question to the Wellington City Council and NZTA in terms of how the revenue is generated. We have always understood at the Regional Council that if time of use charging goes in, at the same time, or if not before that, there has to be an investment into public transport. So those things go hand in hand, and I would have an expectation from our council that money from congestion charging or time of use charging was applied to public transport.
The next one was Tony and then Mayor Fran.
Yes, so I accept that time of use charging is an important tool. I mean, legislation's been provided because it's an important tool to help manage traffic congestion and traffic flow. However, I struggle to support the amendment from Chair Ponta. I think one of the key things, and we're about to go into our version of that, about doing transport changes and implementing tools, is that they're done in an integrated plan. I just want to update you guys that the Wellington City Council recently passed the Mayor's Triennium Plan, and one of the key elements of the Triennium Plan is that there's to be a Wellington City transport plan, an integrated plan for the city under which all of the transport activities and hopefully also including the regional council's public transport services, will be put together so we can see how it all joins up. I just think we were going to get there, and certainly, and I will raise it with the Mayor as well when I get back, because I think it's an important part of that discussion. But I'm reluctant to see that us who are about to get into our own strategy at a regional level haven't really got a clear purpose for this, I guess, or an outcome. I mean, we can't even, work out where the revenue is going to go. I would need to look at the legislation from the City Council point of view. So while I certainly support the intent, and I'm certain that we are going to go there, I just think with respect to the timing, it's a little bit early because I want it all to be done together. In fact, one of the criticisms I would have of the State Highway 1 Improvements Project is that we still, as a city, don't have an integrated plan about how it's to join on to the rest of it. That is also work to be done, and I'm certainly happy to include time of use charging into that package. So so that's the position of the City Council.
Thank you. So Mayor Fran and then Mayor Anita.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I have to say this is a bit like Groundhog Day for me. If you look through the files 10 years or so ago, Luke will know where they are, you'll find this discussion there, and you'll find a lot of work done on it. The reason for time of use charging is not revenue raising at all. That is a secondary consideration. And generally you would suggest it does go into public transport. It's actually to mediate people's behaviour so they don't all come in the road at the same time and cause massive congestion, and actually, which is why it's called congestion charging usually. And it can be applied at any time of the day or night depending on what's happening in the city, and it does actually change people's behaviour, and it means that they're consuming less fuel, they're taking less time to get to their destination, and people who have urgent work and with time frame can actually get there on time. So I think it's important that the committee remembers what the purpose of this is. It's nothing to do with revenue. It's to do with mediating behaviour, and we know it works because it works all over the world. And New Zealand has just been extremely slow in introducing this mechanism. So I'm really in favour of this.
Thank you, Mayor Anita.
Thank you. Poria is not going to support it. It's sort of like telling Wellington to suck eggs. They can do it themselves anyway, and it will affect people from out of the region. I do agree with Fran. It makes a difference. But this was a simple variation. I just feel like we're going off track.
Right. Write a reply from Darren Ponta.
Cool, thank you. So the reason for putting this additional recommendation in is there effectively has been no conversation at all in terms of the proposition and the work that's being done surfaced through this paper that we've got around time of use charging. I think the second issue is that if the City Council is intending to have time of use charging as part of its integrated transport plan, then that's what it needs.
It's not in a case, is it?
And I think that
I'm still doing it. I just hope
to the committee, we would then have clarity that congestion charging is either, time of use charging is either in or out of the work that they are doing, whereas at the moment, we really don't have, I don't have that sense of understanding, and things just seem to be drifting. We seem to have a mechanism that I think had largely cross-party support. It's landed, and nothing has happened in the meantime, by and large. And I understand that, it takes some time for these things to gain momentum. If we carry on this basis, it'll be another 5 to 10 years before we even look at the inside of what a time of use charging system is going to look like.
Great, thank you. If you take your microphone off, and I'll take each recommendation separately for the vote. Sorry. Okay, so you want to put item number 3 in motion first? Okay, but it's there. Okay, motion number 3, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye or put your hand up so we can help be clear. Right. No, there, none online. And thank you. And those against? Oh, no, Andy's got to keep, just hold your hand up. Sorry? Oh, sorry, Andy can't vote. Yeah. For it. Okay. So, what are the numbers there? Sorry? 6, 6, 4. 6, 4. I see what you mean. Sorry. I'm not that dumb. 6 for it and 5 against. Is that anybody else got a different view on those numbers? Okay, the motion is carried. Right, then we're back to the substantive motions of 1 and 2. How about I just put those together? All those in favour, please say aye. 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 Those against? Motion is carried. Okay, right. No, I think we're all clear there. Right, next item number, thank you very much, Emma. Next item, and Grant is coming up. Welcome. Welcome. I'll let you take us through this.
So thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I'll just introduce Vij Kuela, who is the head of the Wellington Transport Analytics Unit that's helped us with the data around the headline targets and some of the discussion which is inside the paper. I'll take the paper as read, but there's a list of points I'd just like to make before opening up for questions. We're asking you to approve the strategic framework today, which comprises the long-term vision for the Regional Land Transport Plan, the strategic objectives and the headline targets. The headline targets are intended to be medium-term strategic targets used to communicate the aspiration and level of change sought by the region across the transport system. They are not intended to be short-term performance indicators. We recommend strengthening the commentary in the RLTP to make it clear that the outcomes measured by the headline targets are not within full control of the RTC members. These outcomes will likely only be achieved through appropriate central government policy, prioritisation and investment. Nevertheless, the RTC plays an important role in advocacy, influencing progress towards the desired state. We're proposing in the paper that the visions and objectives remain largely the same, with some adjustments to the objectives to reflect health and climate impacts, and also the role of freight in the economy and the transport system. For the headline targets, we recommend retaining the existing targets, adjusted for the new timeframes with similar levels of ambition. We also present an additional target that is headline target that is a partial indicator of the transport system's contribution to productivity for your consideration. The next step following today will be the establishment of the transport investment objectives, which is where we set the 10-year priorities, or what will be used to set the 10-year priorities for the programme of activities which is to come. And the final point I'd like to make, and apologies, this is one small error, and this is in the next steps, which is right at the back of the paper, and that's just simply to note that we'll be bringing those transport investment priorities to you in June, not May, as the paper suggests. So we've got a process to go through with officers before we bring them to you at the next meeting. So those are the points which I'd like to make ahead of any questions that you may have.
So just a reminder, that meeting was the 9th of June.
That's correct.
Yes. And then just all noting ahead of questions and then moving recommendations, that of course, recommendation number 5, we're looking between options A and B. So you just might want to think about that when asking questions and any prospective movers and seconders. So I'll take questions. Emma, thank you.
Thank you for your work on this. I know it's a huge amount of analysis and work behind it. My question is really about the cycle we're in terms of getting a new GPS and how you're factoring in any potential change to GPS priorities as you think through the strategic framework.
So through the chair, the first point is that the RLTPs need to be consistent with the GPS, so they don't need to absolutely mirror the GPS. They do. I would also remind the meeting that the GPS, the program activities, has a 3-year focus, whereas the RLTP has a 30-year focus. The way that we're addressing that longer term concern is through the development of the future network plan, which we have discussed, introduced to this committee previously. And the purpose of that is to indicate how the network needs to evolve on a mode neutral basis, so that as we move through what I would say are different political expressions in the GPS, the overall intent and direction for the region's transport network, what we want for it remains the same. And if it is necessary that a particular mode is favoured by a government of the day, there's an opportunity to invest in that at that point in time. And if there's a change in government and priority, we can invest in that. So the message is it's a long-term, the RTP is a long-term plan. Transport investments take a long time, and it will be providing options as to what is invested in based on what this committee expresses through the investment priorities.
Mayor Perry?
Kia ora. Thank you for your work on this. I am pleased to see the impact on human health included in these changes, given that the studies that we have, like the HAPPEN study, show that there was 2,200 deaths from air pollution by motor vehicles in 2016, and nearly 10,000 hospitalisations, and 13,000 cases of childhood asthma. My question is, do you think that needs to feed through into the targets, or do you think that that's covered in terms of the emissions target, because it's a similar, I guess the emissions reduction also is going to improve air quality?
Through the chair, I think the short answer is yes, we believe it does carry through into the targets, so through the emissions quality. The DSIs also have an impact on health and safety as well. And the targets are designed to reflect reflection, and they also measure progress against a number of the strategic objectives as well, which do include that that alteration towards health and well-being. So they are indicative and ambition. The place where ultimately we could pick up specific indicators of that's what this committee wants to do is ultimately in the monitoring framework, where we could actually put specific measures in around health.
And also, is there anything that can be done further on quantifying that burden? Because we do assess projects on the basis of life-saving in terms of road safety. But as I understand it, it's the robustness of the assessment in terms of air quality is not quite so clear in the assessments. Is there anything that can be done at a regional level, or is that something that needs to be done by Waka Kotahi?
That's a very good question. I think we may have indicators around air quality in there. So those are sub-measures that come later when we do the monitoring framework and the reporting. But we can come back to you and confirm that. But definitely that is something that needs to be there. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Boddicker?
Through you, Madam Chair. First time seeing these for me, so I may be missing something here. But attachment 3, a lot of the primary indicators in terms of what this committee might be considering are trending down. I'm just wondering, are we expecting that?
So through the chair, I'll just talk about very briefly about the headline indicators. It would be fair to say that the headline indicators were set actually pre-COVID. And so a number of the circumstances, such as change in work habits, the impact of the COVID epidemic itself, have impacted some of the targets and their general direction. For the headline target indicators, it's not so much that, yes, things are not moving in the right direction, but there's some context. I'm looking particularly at the mode share one. Wellington's PT rebounded to the greatest extent that it did of any OECD capital as post-COVID. And so while it is down, it's not down as badly as it has been in other countries. It's more a case of, from that, what do we do about that in the next RLTP going forward? So I would say that we're not surprised that some of those indicators have moved down in the light of what's happened and the changed the assumptions since those targets were set. The question is, what do we do about that as we set this program and reset the baseline targets as well?
I have a question, just so to help us get a steer on our thoughts for which option we'll go for. Recommendation 5, on paragraph 37, where you talk about a headline target for travel time variability on strategic road routes. I'm just trying to think about, like, what would the cost be of actually researching, pulling that aspect together as a target versus looking at it as potentially only an indicative only piece of information.
I think the cost, and I'll defer to Vij if I need to, we actually already measure that data, we have access to that data. So the cost is in staff time and processing information that we already have access to.
Has anybody else got a question particularly on that one too? So, but no, Councillor Randall has a question.
Yes, I'm just a bit puzzled onto the changes to the targets, the headline targets. Given that the last plan hasn't made that much progress towards the previous targets, why is making the target achievement greater a positive thing? I just sort of I just struggle that I was always taught in my project professional life was that these indicators should be smart. So you've got a lot of specific and measurable, but they've also got to be achievable and realistic. And so I just wonder what the logic is for setting the target as ambitious as it is, given the track record we've had, given that we had COVID, of course, and now a war.
Try again. Through the chair, I'll just talk very briefly to each of the targets. The easiest one and so first of all, I acknowledge the comment that you're making that, I too went through the same school or a similar school where targets are meant to be achievable, realistic and time-based. The emissions reduction target is a national target under the Paris Accord. So as we've noted in the paper, we don't really have a choice at this point in time. And we also require to be consistent with a range of government guidance around climate and emissions. And so while the government's commitment to the Paris Accord remains, I think it would be folly to not reflect that because we need to be consistent with government direction on that. The DSIs, yes, I will admit that what we're proposing is quite a significant drop down. But the feedback that we have received from through the initial earlier feedback is that there's still very strong support for reducing deaths and serious injuries on our road. It's a good question as to whether that would be achievable over that period of time, but we're reflecting the feedback that we've received. And that was the original direction. I know it was set under a previous government which was moving towards Road to Zero. But it also would then require, through the policy statements and the investment, to determine actually what the degree to which we can influence that directly through investments in the Safe Roads concept, which would be the engineering, versus working with central government around vehicle safety standards, driver education, and speed management. It's also perhaps worth noting that while we're asking you to accept, to support these going forward, it will still nevertheless be subject to public consultation as well. So we'll be expecting feedback on those. The mode shift target is the one where we actually have, we are moving that out to the right, and the reason for doing that is that the assumptions that we used to set that target in 2019, which were predominantly the work patterns that people were demonstrating in 2019, on which our projections were, have changed fundamentally since COVID. We've reported back through this committee for a number of years immediately after COVID that we did not know what those long trends were telling us, because the mode share stats were moving up and down. We've seen enough of the data to indicate that work patterns have changed significantly. The other thing which we've also picked up in the preparation why we're proposing this target is that while we have good information and good programs in place for the commutes down the State Highway 1 and State Highway 2 corridors, and we understand that those are changing, there is good mode share in Wellington City. The other territorial authorities, the mode share is a lot lower, so we need to think, if we support this, if the committee supports this target, what else needs to be done to assist people to move towards PT or active modes or lower forms of carbon, lower emitting forms of carbon. So that's the thinking behind proposing those particular targets and where they've come from.
Steve, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question, just thinking back to what we've just gone through in the past around how the spatial plan is going to be developed, and the Wairarapa is potentially going to have an off-ramp. And this is proposed to fit in alongside the spatial plan, or fit into the spatial plan as such. Will the RLTP be created with a potential off-ramp for the Wairarapa? And then thinking about amalgamation, which is up in the air, but is being looked at for the Wellington region. If, and whatever comes out of the RMA and so forth, if it's decided that a regional transport authority is going to be looked at, and that could include Palmerston North as such, to create that loop, are they going to be engaged in this process at all, just to see how they might work into a new regional plan as such?
So through the chair, just to play back to Mayor Cretney, just to make sure the question, is there an off-ramp for the Wairarapa in this one? And I think the other question is, are we engaging with Palmerston North, which would, for the purposes of regional land transport planning, would be Horizons region. So while we have the legislation at the moment for the LTMA, which says this is the Wellington region, these are the 8 territorial authorities plus Greater Wellington which exist in it, there's no specific off-ramp for any TA in that. What I would say in that, however, is that we do recognise in the land transport planning process, we recognise in our team, that we are quite a diverse region. We are very mixed. We have a large metropolitan area, which is centred on Wellington. We have a significant rural area, which is the 3 Wairarapas, which have different needs. But interestingly, it's also a commuter belt, part of the commuter belt as well. And we also have the Kapiti Coast and Horowhenua area as well, which has a different set of needs. So the land transport, the RLTP that we produce, will need to reflect those different nuances in there. What we haven't explored or discussed in that is that would we have sub-regional targets? That's the question which I don't think we've actually considered. We still would prefer to have one target, but acknowledging that there will be different degrees of mode shift, because clearly the degree of PT service in a rural area is going to be significantly different from that in a large urban area. What I would offer, however, is looking at the particular targets, given that one of the areas that has the highest rates of death and serious injuries is in fact rural Wairarapa roads. I'd say that's still a valid target, and maybe there's a different set of interventions needed. And I think we all have an interest in protecting the environment through lower emissions. So I think there would need to potentially be different targeted approaches, and that needs to be reflected. But we do have one overall regional approach, even though it's a bit of a balancing act to get all those balls in one place. sorry, and the last question was, are we thinking about if there's a larger regional transport authority that would include Palmerston North? So we already work closely with Horizons region. The closest example of that has been around the Lindrum trains for Tūhono. So we're actively engaged. GW is actually engaged in the process of setting those services up with Horizons. But a lot of our thinking for that coast and discussions that we have in particular with Horowhenua, but also with Horizons Regional Council, is that for the population that lives in the Kapiti coast, a lot of them look north. So their transport needs are not down towards Wellington City, but because the way central government is set up, if you're going to tertiary medical care, you're going to Palmerston North. Education is in Palmerston North. Employment, and we've got quite strong interest from Levin, is both ways. So we are actually working and thinking about how do we synchronise and build so that the plans are consistent. So if that comes about, it's at least the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle roughly look like they'll fit.
Councillor Ponta.
So-
Can I just Stephen might have a different view, but I actually have a view just about what you said there about fact checking. Living in Otaki, it is Peka Peka is the boundary for health services going north. That is a small part of the Kapiti coast, so the bulk of it actually does go south to the Wellington area. And same with the police lines, housing lines, when, just all those actually just below Otaki is, so probably only about a sixth, not even that, of the population goes north. Councillor Ponder.
Yeah, can I just pick up on the last question? So one of the things that you may not be so aware of is that the reference to the spatial plan is this idea of one document, two chapters, if you like, so that the Wairarapa could see itself in these figures much more than any of us can at the moment. And the off-ramp is potentially dividing the document in half at some point in the future if there's a separate unitary authority or territorial authority for the Wairarapa or anywhere in the region. So my question, I suppose, is based on your last answer. For a lot of these things, Grant, it seems like we have the data, we have the ability to get the data. So my question is, how difficult would it actually be in practice to define the Wairarapa separately from in these figures?
Particularly for those headline indicators, we chose them, Councillor, because there is guaranteed continuity in terms of the data availability, and a lot of those can be broken down by territorial local authority. So it is a commitment we are making for our next monitoring report to be able to show that data in the report broken down to make it easy for everybody else in the broader region to see what's going on in their territorial local authority. So yes, we will aim as much as possible to do so. Might mean we have a longer report, but yeah,
so
we'll do that.
Can I just test you on that? So we'd have the regional figures here with change one, the year change. We would then potentially also have
another column to show
Pororua,
correct,
for Wellington, the city, etc.
Absolutely,
okay.
Yes.
Okay. Does that work? Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? No, none online. So now let's move to looking at a mover and a seconder for the recommendations and indicating which one for 5. Okay, I will move the recommendations and I'll go for 5, option A. Sim, I didn't kind of get a sense of a strong need for B. So will you signal yes? Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, apologies. I'm jumping around from mayor to councillors. I'm not used to that. When we sit around regional council, it's just one thing. So Mayor Perry is going to second that. Thank you very much. So nothing from me on that. Anybody else? Yep. Councillor Randall.
Yes, this is very important, regional strategy, and I just wanted to spend a little bit of time about outlining where Wellington City Council is coming from. First of all, we've been having discussions internally. As I mentioned earlier, the triennium plan has passed by a clear majority of members, and I think supported by all elected members of the City Council, is to have an integrated transport plan. This will be developed over the period, apparently, luckily in parallel with the regional land transport strategy, because we do need to achieve the same things, get a consolidated vision, set of objectives, this exactly what's outlined here. So it's actually quite timely that we're having a discussion here. It does line up, although the City Council is behind, where the regional land transport strategy hopefully will be able to catch up. At this stage, the council, in terms of transport, wants to support all modes, and the plan that will come out will look at addressing the council's preferred options for all of the modes that support transport throughout our city. Just turning to the transport strategy itself, I do have some concerns about how we've developed strategy. I note that we are passing this part of the strategy not just with objectives but with targets, headline targets. But the issue is that we really didn't discuss the targets at our workshop. And so this is, I'm a bit uncomfortable that I haven't heard from the other members of the committee about their views of what these targets are about. I did provide my own feedback to officers and had a meeting with them, and it was a very positive meeting. And I guess the other thing is, as I've alluded to earlier in this meeting, I'm also concerned that we have targets that are not met. I would prefer targets that were smarter. But I accept that we need to have these targets, and these targets are priorities that, at least for continuity's sake, that we need to push on with, because the real discussion will happen in the next round. I also want to propose and lobby even support for option B. One of the things, looking through the reports, and there's some amazing analysis by officers, about how our network has been performing, good and bad. We need to look at the figures. And it seems that the travel times and the reliability of the network has gone backwards somewhat. And I do think that option B, having a journey time reliability issue, would be very useful as a target, because I think it would enable the strategy to have to be able to place some priority and measure progress to make sure the network as a whole is doing the business. The main thing about the transport network is that transport is happening in a cost-effective and known way, and reliability is a very good measure of the quality of a network. And so I do encourage you to support option B. I also want to outline that Wellington City going forward does require investment. We had a plan last time that included Let's Get Wellington Moving, and while there was some investment, we got a cycleway, a roundabout and a pedestrian crossing as a reality of what actually was delivered. And that doesn't mean that Wellington is done. In fact, quite the opposite. We have a successful bus service, and public transport in Wellington City has bounced back to above pre-COVID. We want to support that with further investment. We've also got investments needed in our network, for example, to support the State Highway owner improvements. And I'm also a supporter of the Petone to Granada link road, despite its new route going through some reserves, which is upsetting a lot of people. But we need a better network so the whole thing plans, all of the cities can work together. The Mayor has flagged that we also want to look at amalgamation, and better transport networks will enable everybody to work as one city as opposed to a group of cities. The next phase is the key part for me, and I would ask officers that we have more workshops and earlier workshops about their thinking. And also I would flag that affordability does need to be part of this future conversation as far as what we need for a better network. So I do support all this, and I ask you to support option B.
Thank you very much. So, Councillor Boyer, online.
Hey, actually, I would support option B as well, and that's around. I see the journey time variability as an important productivity measure, and I wonder if by not including it, are we sending a message that productivity possibly doesn't matter to us? It's just a quick thought, yeah.
Is it all you would like to say?
That's all I'd like to say. But I believe option B should be considered.
Flush out people's thoughts. Councillor Ponta.
So I'm not sure if it's a point of order, but you've moved on option A, so option B is not on the table. So if somebody wants option B, they're going to have to move an amendment, I would have thought. So yeah, which isn't you. Yeah.
So if you have guidance to those who are interested, maybe if you want to do an amendment process.
So I guess to sort out the options first, yes, I'll move that option B be agreed to as this amendment to.
Sorry, we're going to have to interrupt because you can't, because you've already spoken to it. So we need another person who can move an amendment. I
With the leave of the meeting.
Mayor Fran's moving an amendment. And
Point of order. To ask the leave of the meeting to move an amendment.
No, I think that's the problem, Tony. The problem is that the standing orders don't allow you to move an amendment once you've spoken.
I know, but standing orders can, with the leave of the meeting, be suspended.
Anyway, you've got a new mover.
right, okay, we'll just go for we've got a new mover, Mayor Fran, and Mayor Anita. Are you going to be a seconder? Is that right?
Yes, for me.
Thank you. Okay. Do either of you wish to speak to your amendment? Nope. Anybody want to debate it? In that case, I'll put the vote for the amendment. All those in favour?
Another division.
Yep. All those in favour, please say aye. Can I?
Aye.
Right. I think that looks like there's enough. I think your amendment's won the day. That's great. Yep. All those against? No. You see, we're all good. Okay. So now the substantive motion is option B. Okay, so any more contributions to the debate? No? Okay, so I'll put all recommendations as a whole, 1 through to 5. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those against? The motions are carried. Excellent, thank you. Right, now, thank you very much. Item number 7, Paul is coming up here, standing in for Samantha Gain to give us an overview and update on Metlink. Okay.
Good morning, councillors, mayors, Emma and Andy. My name's Paul Tarpatu. I'm the Senior Manager of Operations, and you're standing in for Sam for the next couple of weeks while she's in Europe. I'm joined today by Tamsin Evans, who's the Network and Customer Senior Manager for Metlink. We're here to give you an overview today of the public transport network, a bit of an update on performance around the region, and an update of some of the major works we're doing. This happened last week. Is someone doing it for me? Okay, so Metlink is the public transport brand for Greater Wellington Regional Council. Metlink has the strategic overview for the public transport network. We have 5 rail lines, 86 public routes, 123 school buses, a harbour ferry service, and we also have Te Hunga Whaikaha Total Mobility, which is a service for those people who can't easily access the public transport network, as in buses and trains. That's got a fleet of 800 taxis and 39 wheelchair accessible vehicles. Between central government, ourselves and NZTA, we fund 75% of that transport to make sure that people still have a disability and can't use public transport have connectivity still with the community. Our teams are set up as strategy and investment, commercial partnerships, service delivery or operations, assets and infrastructure, and customer and network design. So that one rail operator for us is Transdev. We own and operate 83 multiple units, which are the metro trains, and we also have 24 carriages that run on the Wairarapa. They are circa 1970s. We have a slide coming up that talks about the new Tūhono trains, so we'll sort of leave that part to there. We also run along 160 kilometres of track, and we manage and maintain 48 stations. Kiwi Rail has the network and manages the infrastructure and maintenance of that. We look after everything above platform, so that'll be anything from line marking to station to security to lights, and then Kiwi Rail obviously has the below platform track infrastructure and the overhead wires on the metro service. Kiwi Rail also run the loco for us between Wellington and Marsden. We've got four bus operators: Kinetic, Transurban, Mana, and a user bus out in Kapiti. We've got 483 buses, of which 120 of those are EV, and obviously the rest are diesel. We've got the East by West ferries. Again, we've got the Ikarere, which is electric, and then 2 other diesel boats. Now, to make the dream work, we've got a lot of partners in helping us to sort of make that happen. So central government obviously develops policy and then has the decision on some of the bigger funding decisions, like the Tūhono trains as an example of that. NZTA are the rail regulator, plus they are also our funder and fund 51% of most of our activities. We've talked about Kiwi Rail and our operators. I suppose the work that we do with the other PTAs around the country, in terms of gaining insight on what other PTAs are doing, idea generation, and then the work that we do with the city councils on roading infrastructure, disruption management. So everyone is on board there to help us deliver a reliable service. So just want to talk a little bit, because we had all the mayors in the room, around what's happening on the network. So in bus world, reliability is that a bus showed up, and punctuality is that the bus ran to time. That's probably the simplest way of explaining it, and very much the same with rail. That the train actually showed up, and that it is of the right size, and punctuality is the same. It sort of arrives on the same time. So from the Wellington bus network is, overall the bus network is going really, really well.
the only thing that affects sort of punctuality in the Wellington City area is really road congestion for us, and the number of roadworks around Thornton Quay that were happening sort of last year. Javel line itself runs really well. We had a dip in July, really around weather-related incidents and slips along that line that create TSRs, and TSRs are temporary speed restrictions, where QRail impose a restriction on a piece of line to make sure that we are travelling, or that the train is travelling at a certain speed across that TSR. In the Hutt Valley, I suppose the major piece for us in the Hutt Valley has been the Riverlink projects. There's been a lot of congestion there. We're seeing, while the Ewan Bridge was out, we were seeing buses going from 30 to 50 minutes running late. We've also got some pretty big runs in the Hutt Valley. If we're looking at the 110 that travels from Birchville down to Petone, it just needs any type of delay along there to sort of slow punctuality for us. And I suppose the eastbourne buses are also the same. 81, 83 and 84 have to travel into town. The Esplanade is never great at really any time of the day, so we see lower punctuality in those areas. With the Riverlink project, we are working with Hutt City Council to look at what we can do around bus prioritisation in that area, especially since we've got probably another 4 or 5 years of this disruption in the Hutt Valley. From a rail perspective, this is probably the one area we've got significant infrastructure pieces of work that still need to be done, and so for the Hutt Valley line, there are TSRs all the way along that, which also affects the Wairarapa service as well. So until that infrastructure is fixed, we'll see slower times on that line. Pairua is tracking along really well. The Kapiti line itself wasn't having a great year last year, but TSRs have come off that line. We're starting to see some really good performance on rail, and buses doing really well in the Pairua region. Kapiti is probably a great example. If you've got the rail line is working well and you've got some really good roads, then you get really good performance. So Kapiti is definitely one of those spots. We've got a good bus operator up there, community and people focused, and they do a really good job. Not to say that the others don't, but the smaller teams get they know everything about the area and what's happening in that area, so use bus do a good job at connecting them with the community. The Wairarapa, especially in train, has had didn't have a great year last year. We had issues with with the number of staff we had on the line. We have train managers. It takes 4 to 6 months to train them because of the work, because of the operation through the tunnel. We started seeing some really good performance from September once we'd reached establishment of those drivers, of those train managers. Sorry, we got up to 12 train managers. We were at one point in April and May of last year down to 6. So we're seeing a significant improvement on the train line through from September. So roughly for the last 6 months, we've just seen a lot better performance. Where the performance in terms of punctuality fails on the Wairarapa line is through the Hutt Valley. The Wairarapa line it's been a ton of work done on that line. And I'd like to say that we are nearly there, but we are nearly there. And we do have, probably a year or so to go. But I think 40 kilometres of track has been replaced on the Wairarapa line There are 30 level crossings that have now been completed. We've got the commissioning of the signalling project happening at Christmas of this year. And then the other bits and pieces that need to be done are really around getting stations ready for the tūhono trains. Bus, even though punctuality is a little lower in bus, again, it's more about the operator working with the community. The bus tends to wait for the train, so punctuality is lower because the bus hangs around, whereas in other regions the bus goes at the time it needs to go. We exempt the operator, so we don't penalise the operator for making the right decision, waiting for the train. Okay, so some fares and ticketing changes that we've got coming up soon. So Council has made the decision on the 15th of May. We will increase public transport fares by 3.1%. And then the discounts that are applied to off-peak will be reduced from 30 to 20%. The increase in fares is really just trying to keep pace with inflation and operating costs. Extraordinary Pay Limited, I'm not sure if, how many people have heard about this, but it's quite a good initiative that we are partnering with Extraordinary Pay. It's a system that employers can join, and then their employees will do a salary sacrifice, and they can put their money onto their pre-tax money onto this card. So effectively, they're getting, when they use public transport, they're getting a reduction in their public transport costs by the level of whatever their pre-tax number was. So a really good initiative. We're partnering with Extraordinary Pay. We'd like more customers to get on board as a way of incentivising people to move towards public transport. EMV, which is Eurocard Master Visa, so really PayWave, is coming on the 12th of April, and you'll be able to use PayWave on all Metlink services. It is actually, I should point out, at the moment it's only for adults because kids don't have the ability to pay wave, or I think it's under 16, so it's only for adults at the moment. This is really some of the bigger projects that we've got going on at the moment. We do have a slide coming up around NTS and Linram, also the Waterloo Todd and Harbour Quays. So the very big piece of work that we're doing at the moment with commercial partnerships team is the new bus contracts. So we're into tranche 1, and that's ready to go, or will be ready to go to tender by the 1st of May. It also ties in our asset control strategy around depots and fleet. Greater Wellington Regional Council and Metlink want to make sure that we have a greater control or ownership over critical public transport assets. So it's a fairly big program running over the next 5 years, where we'll have where we're doing 3 tranches of bus plus rail as well. In terms of depots and where we're at with that, we nearly finished construction on the Cowrie Street depot out by the airport. Granada we are also working with at the moment, but it's not on this list. So Granada we're in design phase. Keneperu will be as a partnership with Ngāti Toa Rangatira, and then we've got Landfill Road. Now Landfill Road is still we don't sort of take access of that until I think next year, and there's still a little bit of work to do on that depot in terms of public consultation, and there's a lot of work around around the actual groundworks and contamination that we have to do. So quite a big program. The two Hornell trains. This is a partnership between NZTA, central government, Horizons, and ourselves. Like I was talking about before with the Wairarapa line trains, we are, circa 1970s on that. So it's an opportunity to have new trains in, but really it's about providing greater frequency and better connectivity between the Manawatu, Wellington, and the Wairarapa. So there are 18 5-car battery electric mobile multiple units, which means that up into the wire, being Waikanai and Upper Hutt, they can run on electricity, and then through to Masterton and Palmerston North, they'll be on battery. I think we're about to announce shortly the depot that will be the maintenance depot that we'll be building out in Masterton in Arkuta Road. So I think that's going to bring significant job opportunities to the region. State of the art building. So it's a project that's taken a long time to sort of get across the line. So we're very happy that we got that all signed off in September of last year. The Waterloo TOD, or the transit orientated development, the Waterloo station is really at end of financial life. It's in desperate need of a roof repair. This was an opportunity that the council wanted us to look at to see how we best optimise and maximise the land space. It's got three parts to it. So there is the obviously the redevelopment of the station and the public transport hub, and also a commercial development. We would like to, if it all goes through, bring in healthcare providers into that commercial development. That might be able to dentists and doctors, so people can access it without having to actually go too much further than Waterloo. We're in the council have signed off on the reference design, and we're just working on next steps from there.
Oh, tēnā koutou. So I'm going to cover the next couple of slides here. Rapid transit bus corridors, in particular Harbour Quays, and I'll also talk a little bit about work we're doing on our eastern bus corridor. So Harbour Quays is an alternative route through the city for public transport. The Golden Mile is reaching capacity in terms of bus traffic, and our ability to provide capacity for faster and more reliable services and more frequent services is hampered by that corridor. So Harbour Quays is an alternative to that. On the diagram you can see there the red dotted line is the route that's proposed from the station to Courtney Place, going up the quays and then returning down Wakefield Street at that turning point. It serves a couple of purposes. Yes, there's the relief for the Golden Mile. It's also proving to be an integral part of the State Highway 1 RONS program. Two sides to that. One in terms of our ability to manage the disruption from the construction phase, in terms of facilitating that access to and through the central business district, but it's also part of that wider system of the State Highway 1 transit through the city. We're going out for consultation on the 19th of May to the 14th of June on this project, and we'll bring that back to both Wellington City Council and Greater Wellington Regional Council for approval of the business case and approval to proceed, assuming all the consultation comes through. I think it is planned for August, September. And that will be a decision for the councils to approve the business case. It's really the main example of the work we're doing around bus prioritisation through the city in partnership with Wellington City at the moment. It is a 50-50 cost share project, both councils contributing equally. So we were unsuccessful in funding through the Regional Land Transport Fund. The other project that we're doing around improving that bus capacity through the city is on our east-west corridor. We've, with Wellington City, finished works on the Karori to Central City part of the route, and this is about making sure that we can run the services reliably and punctually. And part of that involves making sure we have the infrastructure on the ground in the road corridor so that the buses can stop and pull in. We obviously have multiple occasions when we've got more than one bus at a stop. We need to make sure the stops are extended, that the shelters are in the right place, that the access on and off the bus is safe and properly located. So we finished that work on the Karori to Central City section. That will enable us to run articulated buses on that part of the route later this year. Those are due to go into operation in October. And we are, at the same time as we're consulting on Harbour Quays, we'll be going out to the community to look at the improvements we need to make on the second part of that corridor, which is from the central city out to Miramar. Same thing about increasing the capacity so that we can continue to run sufficient buses to meet the demand and offer that reliable and punctual service. The national ticketing solution, there's a lot to say in this space. Yes, we are moving towards implementation in 2027. The EMV scheme, the contactless payments pay wave that Paul mentioned, is our transition to the national ticketing solution, shifting people onto an alternative payment method, which offers that convenience and separation from Snapper as part of that move towards the national solution of Motu Move. Te Waitakemore o Te Awa Kairangi Riverlink. So obviously this is a pretty significant project on the regional scale, not just around the flood management, but obviously in terms of the transport improvements. Lots of work being done on the State Highway 2 interchange and the implications that then has for public transport. One around the works we're doing to improve the access to Melling Station over the longer term, but looking to see better reliability and reduce congestion on State Highway 2 in terms of the bus side of the public transport system. Improve multimodal connections with pedestrian and rail connectivity, and aiming to increase the reach of the public transport system so that more residents are within reasonable catchment space of that. So there are two things we're looking at in this space. One is our alternative around Melling Station, which is on the next slide, but as Paul mentioned, we are seeing significant disruption impacts from the construction, which is giving us an opportunity to look with Hutt City Council at bus prioritisation through the Lower Hutt CBD, and the lessons that we're learning out of that, one, and not just Hutt City centric, but will also provide some interesting examples of what we can do around managing disruption in Wellington City for the State Highway 1 RONS program. So the Melling Station closed at Christmas last year. The building has physically been moved now. In the interim, which is a couple of years of no services to Melling Station, rail services terminate at Western Hutt, and we have supplemented the network with additional bus services and extensions to the services there. The aim being that we're providing access, continued access to the rail network, but through Waterloo Station rather than Melling. We have additional park and ride facilities at Petone. Fair to say they're not quite as well used yet as we would have anticipated, but they're not ideally located given the topography of the space. So that's an opportunity for us to look at how we can improve our experiences around park and ride for the future. We are beginning to see increases in patronage from Waterloo, which could be part of that movement from Melling. But given the level of disruption at the moment and the fluctuating numbers on rail and bus in the Hutt Valley, it's a little bit hard to say at the moment that this is a direct correlation. I think that's a quick fly through.
Any questions? Can I just, I'll ask a question to kick things off. So on the front of the post this morning, out on the table there was a story about the new ticketing approach. So I just wonder if there's any comment you've got about that, any corrections that we can make or need to make, or is it all, yeah?
Well, I think it didn't represent what we're doing around EMV correctly. The reason we've had to look at Paywave is that our contract, it's all about timing. Our contract with Snapper was going to end before NTS was implemented. That would have left Metlink with no way of being able to collect revenue. So yes, we needed something else in the meantime until we're able to transition over to NTS, and NTS was a finished product for us.
Thank you. Right, other questions, Steve?
Through you, Madam Chair, shamelessly self-interested question. Paul, I think you said that Kapiti was doing well. Does that mean you're expecting the punctuality and the reliability indicators to get back up to the levels they were, because they're both dipping?
I think since, and this is probably at the back end of last year, once TSR started to come off, if we're talking about rail, we started to see that punctuality started to improve. I haven't seen or noticed it take any dive. You know, we got any on that, Andy?
I think the performance after January, we had some pretty big impacts on the networks around weather events as well and theft. So from memory, I think those are the ones that have driven down. There's some pretty shocking performance statistics in February, particularly for the network as a whole.
Thank you. We are seeing a lot of theft of copper. So people are going into tunnels, and it's feels like a daily occurrence where people are stealing off the rail. We're getting times where we've just installed it, or QRail have just installed it, next day someone's nicked it.
That would have been a good front page story, actually. Simon.
Yeah, a lot of talk today about mode shift. Does Metlink have any longer term thinking, particularly in regards to Waterloo, Todd and the new Melling station, about some better facilities for those who are going to, I hope, bike to those stations in the future? Because I have a perception, I think it's a perception a lot of cyclists have, they're not going to leave their bikes, especially their $5,000 e-bikes, in those racks that are currently provided. They're looking for something more secure by way of maybe some enclosure around those racks and a swipe card that are provided to regular cyclists. But are these sorts of things something that Metlink is looking at?
I might have to come back to you on that. I know that we do have some lockups. Wellington Station would probably be one of those, and I know that there have been a number of incidents in the park and ride facilities and also bike storage where bikes where there's theft occurring. But if I can come back to you on that.
Kia ora, thank you for this. I understand the presentation was about BAU and future, but we also are in the middle of a potential fuel, upcoming potential fuel crisis. I'd just like to know how far through the planning is in that regard in terms of, the responses to the government's fuel response plan, and also if we'll get any opportunity to feed into that, in particular around things like how prioritisation will work. For example, if you can only have you only have a limited number of EVs buses, where do those go on the network? Is it the highest routes? Is it to places like the hospital? Is it to distributed amongst the different areas? I mean, what's the the questions are, how far through are you on that? Will that come to us? And are you doing the thinking around kind of prioritisation framework through those different, particular phase 3 and 4?
Yeah, so we've updated our BCP to align with the National Fuel Plan. Really, it will be a staged approach. I don't think we've got any issues with coming out to talk about where we think we should be prioritising vehicles if we were to get to stage 3 and 4, and the same with our electric vehicles where that would get put, where they would be put. We are working at the moment, and I suppose that's the big piece that we'll have to connect operators with, is what services would we be looking at reducing if we had to, or would we be moving to a Sunday or Saturday timetable, so we're not using as much diesel, but we've still got services running. So that's the sort of grunt work that my team in Tamsin working on at the moment.
Awesome, thank you very much. Anybody else got any questions?
Yep. I've got another separate question. On the Todd's presentation page, it talks about two other potential areas of Johnsonville, and let me find the other one. Johnsonville and Porirua. Everyone probably in this room has heard me talk previously around the opportunity for Timberley Park as a potential Todd and or a station with a residential development next to it, which would help fund the station. To me, that is has a big bang for buck in terms of improving mode shift and accessibility to the city centre and things like healthcare services, as you mentioned before, and also to Councillor Randall's point, will significantly improve our congestion problem that we have in Upper Hutt, because many of our journeys in the morning are to the Upper Hutt train station from the north. So we have a problem where a third of the population live north, and then they drive to the middle of town to park their cars for the day to go on the train to Wellington, which is an inefficient use of our city centre space as well as causing congestion. So on that, that's my 1 minute pitch of my pet project. But is it specifically in this where it says Porirua and Johnsonville, are you looking broader at other options, including things like Timberley Park and potentially also Live-In?
I'd probably be honest and say, in the current funding constrained environment that we're in, even though council would certainly wanted us to look at other areas, we'd have to. We certainly don't know whether we'd be able to fund any of those projects. So that's really, I suppose, being honest with you, is that we wouldn't have looked at Timberley, but even Porirua is potentially one that we still wouldn't be able to fund.
Councillor Ponta?
Just in response to that, I think Paul's right that nothing is being advanced at the same pace as Waterloo. but the bigger issue of transit-oriented developments is part of the spatial, the regional spatial plan. So that's the area that we need to sort of grip up and have that conversation. Yeah, it applies to potentially clearly at a much smaller scale. Timberley would be at that end potentially, but so would a development in Featherston, which has previously been mooted as well.
Okay, so I think if we conclude there, thank you very much. Yeah, I just think we've got one more item, but I think maybe a little 5 minute stretch of legs, grab a fresh cup of coffee, and then we'll then be really focused for Andy's presentation. So just 5 minutes for stretch of legs. So for those online, we're going to start back at our meeting now. So hopefully everyone's like topped up their cuppa. And now we'll have our last item. So welcome Andy to presenting with us for an update from Kiwi Rail's perspective. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay. I think there was a bit of crossover with the previous presentation as well, so I'll just try and keep it concise to a little bit around our legislation and then where we at in terms of the network upgrades. I'm gonna blast through a few of these slides at the start, just things for reference, just around the sort of scale of our business and what we do. But ultimately, we're kind of split into two parts: so above rail and below rail. So the freight and passenger services that we operate, and then the infrastructure that underpins that. And I will. Okay, there are more animations on this slide than I was expecting, so I'm going to move through these. In terms of the Wellington network, Paul touched on a bit of the scale of that. So for the Capri line, we have our passenger services that we work with Metlink to deliver. We also have our long distance passenger, so the tourist trains, and then freight services as well. So it's around 7 or 8 return freight services a day coming through that line with the North Island main trunk. The Hutt Valley line, again, commuter services, and we do have some freight coming through, largely from the Wairarapa. So that's the log services. That's a couple of log services a day, and same situation for the Wairarapa line. And we also have the Melly and Johnsonville lines as passenger only. Okay. So I'm just going to touch on two key bits I just want to sort of outline. The first one is around KeyRail's position as a state-owned enterprise. So we must be profitable, and we're driven to that. We had some discussion previously just around that freight service offering and our the cost of our freight services. It is a challenging environment when we're competing with road. We are better at moving large and heavy things long distances, but we have quite a high operating cost to contend with. When it comes particularly probably to the Wairarapa, this would be most relevant, is we're competing with sole traders that own their truck and trailer units, and it's easy to end up in a race to the bottom, which isn't something that KeyRail can really compete with. So yeah, that's a big driver for how we price ourselves in the market. In terms of the infrastructure, the key piece of legislation really is the Railways Act, and there's a couple of pieces in this that drive a lot of our thinking, or drive a lot of our behaviours, particularly around the so far as reasonably practical element of the legislation. What that really means for us is any change to the network, we have to address the risks that introduces, and we have to do that in a so far as is reasonably practical way. The onus and the burden really leans towards doing what's safe. Cost is considered, but it's considered in terms of grossly disproportionate. So if you have a risk to life, then it's not a case of we can't quite afford that. It's a much higher threshold. So quite often with initiatives in the rail corridor, that's the sticking point that can be hard for us to move away from, or it drives up the cost for us to mitigate that risk. Level crossings are a good example of that. And I think the other piece, just for everyone to bear in mind as well, is we can only operate within the rail operations under that legislation. So whilst we might be able to put more people onto rail, and that's a safer mode of transport, we can't trade off that risk under that legislation. We can only deal with the risks that exist in the network, in the rail network on its own. So we can look at an entire journey length and try and reduce risk across that journey length to try and mitigate the changes that we've created, but we can't lean on somebody now not being in a car and being in a train and that being a safer option. Okay. Just a bit of an overview of the key stakeholders we have. In terms of that above and below rail, arrangement. You can kind of think of our shareholding ministers as particularly focused on our above rail operations and our state-owned enterprise status, and our portfolio ministers particularly focused on our below rail and infrastructure. And we have a range of monitoring agencies as well that look through what we do. In terms of, I guess, the context for how we prepare our plans and how that ties in with the RLTP process, the RNIP, or the Rail Network Investment Programme, is the piece that we are working on, and I'll cover off timings in a second on that. But these ultimately exist and run in parallel, so there's a bit of collaboration to do between the RLTP and the RNIP, and hopefully that's something we can look at in future sessions. In terms of funding, the division is probably the PTI stuff sits under the NLTF in terms of its petrol charges and road user charges and things. Track user charges and crown top-ups go towards the infrastructure part, and that's generally the metros are in the PTI space, and the remainder of the rail network that covers freight and others is in the through RNIP and in the track user charges and crown top-up. Okay, so timing-wise, we are just starting our work on the next RNIP, and there will be some interactions around what initiatives sit within that over the coming months. So we're right at the early stages of putting that plan together, and yeah, we'll be interacting with some of your teams on those initiatives.
Just as you're passing through that, Andy, when you say it that quickly, I sort of sit here and go, oh, that's good. And then I think, oh, shit, that's another 10 years of pain for commuters and what have you. Not so good. So my question is, how can we get more efficient in the blocks of line process? Because you guys need to close the line for the safety of workers, access of equipment, upgrading stuff and what have you. But it shits on the public transport network. Reliability goes through the floor, people's confidence in the system disappears, and they send us emails on a regular basis going, I'm not using the system anymore, your trains don't work on the weekends, etc. And it's not just a once a month thing, it's now every month, etc., etc. And of course, the further out you live on the network, like the Wairarapa or the Kapiti Coast, the worse it is. As we go into the new RNIP, is there a different way of approaching how we do the works? I give you the Rimataka tunnel closure 2 months or what have you. Would it be better for us to, or for KiwiRail to just end up going, we're closing down the system for 6 months over the summer period in order that we can get the works done once and for all? Sorry to land that with you, Andy, but it's a looming issue that we just can't continue as the network provider to continue with this situation.
Yeah. Has that idea been looked at?
Yeah, I can give you an overview of kind of where our thinking is at on that one, and where we're heading to. So yeah, I absolutely agree. I think, first and foremost that we are very aware of that patronage decline. So when we started some of the works from 2018, 2019, where we had 14 million passenger journeys in Wellington, and we're down at 10.5 now. Yeah, very much focused on that. And so the first piece the first change that's really occurred within KiwiRail is around the establishment of a metro business unit. So it's the metro sat as part of infrastructure in terms of its function within the business. We now have a chief metro officer, and Auckland and Wellington are specifically represented as part of the executive team under that business unit. That's a change that's only just come into effect. So we're sort of going through the early stages of that. In terms of Wellington, we have just closed off the process of redesigning our operating model in terms of how we function and stand ourselves up, and we're going through a recruitment piece at the moment to fill some more seats. So it is a pretty radical change to how we've structured our business in Wellington, and that means bringing both the capital investment teams and the maintenance function in under one one team. It's re-looking at the operating model. So we historically have been very discipline-based operating model, and then within that there's different zones that people work in. The new operating model is more focused around what's the state of the asset, is it safe to run trains, and what are we planning to do? Maintaining to keep things operating day to day, and then our interventions teams around those bigger renewals. So it is all a network-wide view rather than kind of sort of disparate views of the network. So trying to target that that view towards taking a bigger picture look at it. It'll take us some time to get the structure in, and in the medium terms for the next financial year, we have funding for overdue renewals, and we have some stuff we have to deliver on. So we'll keep working through that. But for the next triennium, and once we think about the next on it, that's where we want to be, in a place where we're doing the work differently. We've set ourselves up in a different operating model. We've got some investment in plant and equipment and ways of working to try and shift from how we've historically done things to stuff that's higher production, but sort of in short and out of the way again. So we don't have a silver bullet. It's going to take a whole range of changes to the way we operate, but that's certainly something we've invested in and are making a go of.
Can I just I'll do a follow up. So do those new roles like report to you, or are they, how's that work?
Yeah. So I took the role as general manager for Wellington Metro Network in August last year, and since then we've been working through the operating model design. So all of the infrastructure functions in Wellington for the Metro Network report through my team. And then I have a counterpart in Auckland, a general manager for Auckland, and we both report to the Chief Metro Officer.
All right. So I'm just wondering if this forum is an opportunity for some new people to kind of not having to, well, they might also go out and meet and greet and be involved in connecting, but this might also be an opportunity as a place where they can have all the different views around the table at one time. So it would probably be quite good to meet people. Thank you. Mayor Fran.
Thanks, Andy. Glad that you've got a metro unit. That makes sense. But you didn't answer Darren's question. So, just speaking for Wairarapa, people are so pissed off with the train service now that, I mean, it's not used. All of us have had experiences of being left on the platform, no notification, app still says the train's coming, it doesn't turn up, yada yada, or it's late, or whatever. And I am interested in the suggestion that rather than doing these frequent small stops, you just do less frequent but larger ones where they're programmed well in advance. People know they can make arrangements for a period of time. I know that there are workforce considerations for you, but actually QRail's a big player, and it might also work in other parts of the country. You move people around a bit. I seriously think you should look at that, because people could say, okay, so there's going to be a month with no trains, but we know that after that it's going to be a lot better, and we'll go back to rail again. Right now, you've lost the hearts and minds in Wairarapa, actually.
Yeah. So to answer that particular question around the access and the disruption, in the short to medium term, we have just some bread and butter type compliance work we have to do just to keep the network functioning day to day. But we recognise we need to look at other ways of delivering, and if that is like they've done in Auckland, where there's been large scale shutdowns to be able to tackle it and then get out of the way, absolutely open to that. Really, it takes me to get the team in place and then get a planning horizon that's a little ahead of us, so then we can turn our attention to, okay, how could we deliver that package? The first step as well for the next triennium is rerunning our asset management models, looking at the priorities, and then packaging that work up. And that's the opportunity to say, well, hey, actually, that, the things that are high priority and sort of late to medium priority, maybe we bundle them into one thing and just do a single disruption to tackle it, because you better to be at a location in the network and get it all done and get it out of the way than come back each week with a different thing you do. It certainly is central to the thinking of my leadership team in terms of how we plan that going forward. There will always be a baseline of compliance work we have to do. But I'll touch on the coming slides as well, just around some of the work bank that we've got, because the overdue renewals piece is what has the biggest impact on our ability to package work up.
So if you're thinking that way, which is phenomenal, again, putting on Wairarapa hat, we're getting new rolling stock in a few years' time, and it would be good to get all this done before that happens, because we're expecting greater frequency and reliability. Frequency is critical for us, not just for commuters, but for tourists, visitors. I mean, at the moment, nobody in their right mind would catch the train to Wairarapa as a tourist, but they should be able to, and feel confident that they're going to be picked up at the station and taken somewhere. We can't do that now. So for our economy, it's really critical, and for the commuters. And if you could get that done before rolling stock arrives, I think you'd be in a really sweet spot then.
I'll jump a couple.
Yeah, can I just say also that, you know, consider this as a potential forum to kind of socialise the new thinking, you know, rather than having to go on a bit of a road trip. There's all the critical players come to this meeting, so it would be really good to just think of us as that port of call there.
So getting into the work we've been doing, renewals. So we were funded in 2018 for a bow wave of overdue renewals that was focused on the Wairarapa generally. So that all the assets were delivered at the one time originally, and then all life expired at the same time. So that's where the 40 odd kilometres of track relay through the Wairarapa came from. The work we did in the tunnel, a number of bridges were replaced. So overall, the asset health in the Wairarapa is actually in pretty good shape now. There are still little bits and pieces to do. And coming to your point there around the new trains, you know, if we look at Auckland has the CRL opening as the big sort of thing we can look that North Star that people can look to. There's a benefit coming, so we've got to get the work done before that comes into play. Really 2029, 2030 is that for Wellington. It's a different scale, but we are very conscious that we've got to try and drive to get that work done, so that when the increase in both regional services and metro services comes, we're able to deliver our maintenance in a different way, because we'll have a higher frequency timetable to contend with, and that people have been waiting a long time for the benefit to land, so we best be out of the way and things be operating pretty smoothly by the time it does arrive. The other thing in the renewal space, so we've had 3 years for what we call overdue renewals funded. That's really just rectifying the decades of underinvestment in the renewal space. So we have a pretty significant backlog to work through, and that is the one initiative, I think, in terms of future projects that is super important to us. Yeah, as we've seen, when it's not reliable and punctual, then the patronage declines. The overdue renewals still has around 7 years worth of funding required to get us to a point where we have a steady state, or an asset base we can maintain in a reasonable way. In terms of the metro services, we've had funding since 2018 to deliver those. So there's a number of projects. The last one remaining is around our substations. So that'll go a long way to sorting out the power supply for trains, and that runs through to the 2029 kind of milestone for the new Tahona services arriving. And regional rail, we've been delivering for a few years now, nearing completion for the Wairarapa signalling work, and looking to commission that at Christmas. And we're about halfway through the design for all of the other infrastructure that's required as part of that. So those are really the key things that are coming. I haven't specifically touched on ETCS. That's an initiative we've put in a business case for. If we think about overdue renewals or work that needs to be done to make sure we have a reliable service, we have some signals assets that are, well, they don't owe us anything. They've been in the network for some getting close to 100 years now. So the ETCS project is a big ticket item. It's $1 billion investment to put that technology in, and within that means we replace a whole load of legacy signaling assets. We're really getting to the point now we have to relook at whether that funding will come, and if not, then we need to be starting to expedite replacement of some of those signaling systems. There's a bit of a patchwork around the network.
So when you put European train control in, do you have to do that on a nationwide basis, or can you do that on a sub-national basis.
Yeah, we can do it on in a metro network. We can do it just in the across the entire country. And I think really because of the traffic volumes and things, that's why the metros tend to be seen as the place that needs it more than.
Does it mean that any locomotive that enters this metro area then has to have ETS system on the locomotive?
It's a similar situation to where we're at in Auckland. I think once you make a choice to invest in ETCS in Wellington and you implement it, you end up making sure that the freight services that come through get picked up, and whether that's as part of the initial investment or it comes after because it's a requirement, it suddenly becomes reasonably practicable to deliver it once you've already got it through every other service. So,
Sorry, we seem to be taking questions as we go, if that's still all right.
Yes, fine.
Chair, through you, Chair. Yes, great. So in terms of, you mentioned the change to the operating model, which sounds really reassuring, and I'm excited about that. In terms of, I'd like to know what's needed if we were to kind of boost through that overdue renewals and shorten the 7 years. What would be required? I mean, I know that you're setting up the organisation, but in your estimation, what is it that we need to change through the system to get to that place quicker? Because 7 years, I mean, it's a long time.
Yeah, I think probably coming back to the earlier questions, if you want to deliver the scale of asset improvement across our whole asset base in the Wellington network over a shorter period of time, then we have to look at closures of sections of the network. Just the quantum of work to get through, and that's the only efficient way to do it. So we would have to look at something else.
And can you give us a estimation of that? So if we say, for example, on the Hutt Valley line, if we were to encourage to go quickly, how long are we looking at closing down the Hutt Valley line if we were to shorten that? I mean, I know it's a hard question to answer, but just, I mean, are we talking a year? Are we talking, 3-month periods every year, or what's the scale?
Yeah, it's a difficult one to answer. I guess the first thing would be the horizon to be able to get to it. You would need, if I think of signalling replacements, you need a couple of years to lead you in to go through a design process. So you would need a couple of years at least to get everything designed and ready for action. You also look at breaking the network up based on where our busing points are, so that there's different ways we can disrupt the network in terms of stopping at signals, but the reality is where can you run buses from becomes what can you shut down. So you probably have a staged arrangement where you progressively work through the network, shutting those sections and trying to limit to one piece at a time. It could be, I'm going to say 3 to 6 months of shutdowns, but it depends as well in different parts of the network. Where have you got neighbours? Can we do 24-hour working? Can we only work during the daylight hours? That would have a big impact on how much you can get done. But look, we certainly know that where we've done big shutdowns for some of the major capital projects, we can bring the resources in from around the business and contract resources in. But that just takes time to be able to communicate to everybody what's coming and for people to ready up and for resources to be kind of available to deliver the work. That was my last slide. So, happy to take any further questions if you've got them.
Just following on from that question, would the finances be there and ready to spend? Is it?
No, there's nothing secure on overdue renewals funding past the end of the next financial year. So we don't have funding for overdue renewals past the end of the next financial year. So we're funded. That'll be the 3rd year that we've been funded for, and
we operate differently in local government.
I do think that is part of the problem here. Yeah. So you get a bundle of cash and then you spend it all to the end of the year, and then you're into the next planning mode, and there's it's a ridiculous way to do it.
It's not an efficient use.
I feel for you. But it's affecting us all. I think you get the message. I'll come back to you on
You
that
can
issue.
talk to Winston about it.
Thanks.
Just in relation to my earlier question to you, I'll put to you as well, in relation to Iran fuel crisis potential. Can you talk us through very quickly in terms of your business continuity planning process, when you think that will be something you can share? Can you share it with all of us? And anything you'd like to highlight on risks for us in our communities?
Yeah, it's probably one I'll need to take away and have a chat to the wider business on where we're at in that space. Yeah, I know that in terms of our freight business, we are trying to hold the line on our fuel adjustment factors, and we're not into a weekly or shorter horizon in terms of recovering costs for the impact of the fuel situation. We're still on a monthly look ahead, but in terms of resilience of what happens when that fuel dwindles, yeah, I'll have to come back on that one.
Will it be logs on our electric trains?
That could be it.
Okay.
We can't eat logs, but sorry, I do have one further question, and this might be another takeaway. You mentioned, so far as reasonably practical, I've done a little bit of homework on this, and it seems to me to be the road cone problem for rail. So we're spending a lot of money on minimising a narrow risk at the expense of broader system improvements, which would reduce risk overall. I wondered, is there anything that we can do, because it has gone to Ministry of Transport via a letter that I sent with a rail participant to try and relook at it, because it looks like we're spending a lot of money on individual projects and we're not getting very far. And the risk we're minimising is small compared to the benefit we could get from mode shift overall from spreading the costs further. Is there anything we can do for you?
I think that sort of lobbying in letters is a powerful tool, and really is probably what we need to lean on everyone around this room for.
Can you bring a paper back to us or something? Can someone suggest the best process in terms of how we can support? Is it a paper that you raise the concerns that you've got in it, and we have a look at options in terms of writing to ministers? Or
I think that the stretching that the person you were had worked with and is probably the same. There have been a couple of papers written by them that I've seen, so certainly that's something I could share around the group, and people could choose to point to the arguments in that to assist them.
Okay, I'll liaise with Chair Ponter on that. Thank you.
I'm just mindful of that, budget coming up. Will that be May? May is the next budget? Yeah, so if we looking through in there to see what joy there is, or how our reactions might group up together for that as well. But maybe we can have a bit of consideration about if there's anything in here that we put on for the 9th of June agenda as well. Thank you. Steve, you were going to...
Through you, Madam Chair. Andy, I worked in the rail industry in Western Australia and New South Wales, and freight was paying its way. So when it came to a train that needed to go into a siding to let another train through, freight trumped passenger. Is that something that you have to deal with here?
Sorry, you mean in terms of
priority?
Yeah. I think it's probably the establishment of our Metro's business unit should bring a much greater balance to that view of where the priorities sit. Realistically, where we need to get to is the services are scheduled, and if you miss your slot, then it shouldn't be impacting the others. I think for the Metro particularly, we have some critical freight that has to get through to meet the ferries, and that's something we're always trying to juggle. That being said, I think having there is a new role within our Metro's business unit specifically looking at how we allocate access to the network and how we prioritise access to the network. And I think that person will probably help ensure that that's fair and equitable, and we've got some transparency over that decision making.
Good.
Awesome. Can I just check about that? When you're saying that the funding's not guaranteed till the end of, is it this financial year or?
So we have overdue renewals funding this financial year and then next financial year. So it will be 2027, mid 2027 onwards,
Right.
where we haven't we've not got security over the overdue renewals funding.
Essentially a window for the next kind of budget round term and it starts like, you know, anytime soon. Awesome. Thank you very much. So thank you very much, everybody, and thank you to those online. It's echoing all very funnily. So good to see you all, and look forward to seeing you on the 9th of June. And take care out there. So thanks very much for your presentations, everybody. Thank you. Bye. Actually, I just realised I haven't closed off at the clock here. So is that do this microphone? Kia tautau, kia tau te rangimāri, kia ranga, kia raro, kia roto, kia waho, io ki te orangi, ka whakamau, kia tina, hui e tai ki e. Kia ora.